It was a chilly winter evening in a peaceful little town. The air was crisp and soft. Church bells echoed in the distance. Everyone in town had come together for a special day: Anna and Daniel's wedding. Anna, at 28 years old, had always caught people's attention. She wasn't just beautiful, she had a charm that made her unforgettable. Daniel, at 32, was equally admired. He was a successful businessman with a confident personality, the kind of man who could win over anyone. Together, they looked like the perfect couple, the kind of love story people dreamed about. Their story had already become the town's favorite. Just a year ago, they met at a charity event. Daniel was instantly drawn to Anna's kind smile, and Anna couldn't help but admire Daniel's confidence and generosity. From that moment on, they were always together. It didn't take long for Daniel to propose. He made it a grand romantic moment, and everyone was amazed. Their wedding promised to be just as magical, and they didn't disappoint. Anna's walk down the aisle was breathtaking. She wore a beautiful white dress, her face glowing with what everyone thought was pure happiness. Daniel stood at the altar, watching her with nothing but love in his eyes. They exchanged their vows, promising a lifetime of love and support. When their kiss sealed the ceremony, the room erupted with cheers. Everyone believed they were witnessing the start of a perfect love story. The reception that followed was just as grand. The hall was filled with music and laughter, guests toasted to the couple, speeches were full of love and praise, and Anna and Daniel's first dance as husband and wife left everyone in awe. But behind all the smiles and celebration, something wasn't right. Anna smiled, yes, but if you looked closely, her smiles didn't seem genuine. Her laughter felt just a little forced. Her eyes, usually so full of light, carried a flicker of something else, something no one could quite place. Some memories she'd tried to resurrect, but had run out of strength. Some memories she'd tried to retain. Daniel, on the other hand, was blissfully unaware. As he held Anna close during their dance, he didn't see the tension hidden in her gaze. To him, this was the happiest day of their lives. But to Anna, it was something else entirely. After the celebrations ended, Anna and Daniel retired to their suite in a grand, luxurious hotel. The room was perfect, a vision of romance, with rose petals scattered across the bed and soft candlelight casting a warm glow. The scent of roses filled the air, and the atmosphere seemed almost magical. Daniel, still beaming with joy from the day's events, poured 2 glasses of champagne. He raised his glass with a big smile and said, "To us, to our future, and to the life we're about to build together." But Anna didn't match his excitement. She looked different now, distant. Her once warm eyes were cold, and the glow she carried earlier had faded. Daniel noticed the change immediately. He lowered his glass slightly, concern creeping into his voice. "Is everything okay, Anna?" Anna hesitated. Her hands trembled as she held her champagne glass. "Yes," she said quickly, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Everything's fine." Daniel tried to break the tension. He began talking about their journey together, recounting the moments that had led them here. He spoke of their dreams, their plans, and how perfect the day had been. But with each word, the silence between them grew heavier. Anna barely responded, her thoughts seeming miles away. After a while, she couldn't stay seated any longer. She stood up and walked to the large window that overlooked the city. The glittering lights stretched out below them, but her gaze seemed fixed on something far beyond the view. "Anna, what's wrong?" Daniel's voice was softer now, but there was an edge of worry. She turned to face him slowly, her expression calm but unreadable. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "I know everything, Daniel." Daniel froze, the air around them suddenly thick with tension. He set his glass down, his face a mix of confusion and alarm. "What are you talking about?" Anna stepped closer, her voice steady now, every word piercing like a blade. "About her. About the affair." She paused, letting her words sink in. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Daniel's face drained of color, his mouth went dry, and he stumbled back, unable to form a coherent sentence. For a moment, time seemed to freeze, the weight of Anna's words hanging heavy in the air. His mind raced, desperately trying to find a way out, but Anna's piercing gaze held him in place. It was as if she could see right through him, cutting through the layers of lies he had woven so carefully. "Anna, I can explain," he stammered, his voice faltering, the words tasting bitter as they left his lips. But Anna didn't let him finish. Her eyes flashed with a cold fury, and the hurt that had been festering for so long finally erupted. "Explain what, Daniel?" Her voice trembled with a mix of rage and heartbreak, her words sharp as daggers. "Explain how you betrayed me? How you pretended to love me while sneaking around with someone else? How you stood there in front of everyone, promising a future with me, while behind my back you were with her?" Daniel reached out, his hands shaking, as if he could somehow touch her and make everything right. But Anna stepped back, her body rigid, her emotions a storm ready to consume them both. "I'm sorry, Anna," he whispered, desperation creeping into his tone. "I never meant for this to happen." Anna laughed bitterly, the sound cutting through the room like a knife. The tears that had been threatening to fall were now flowing freely down her face, but it wasn't just sorrow, it was a raw, consuming pain. "You never meant for it to happen," she echoed, her voice rising with each word. "You thought you could deceive me, Daniel, pretend everything was fine, even after all the lies. Do you really think I'm that stupid?" Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to take her in his arms, to apologize, to beg for forgiveness. But he knew it was too late. The distance between them felt unbridgeable now. Anna wasn't the same woman who had walked down the aisle earlier that day. This was someone else, someone who had been broken and betrayed, and the weight of her discovery had shattered the fragile illusion of their perfect life. "I loved you, Daniel," Anna whispered through her tears, her voice thick with emotion. "I gave you everything, my heart, my trust. I thought we were building something beautiful together." She shook her head, her hands trembling as she wiped at her cheeks. "But you destroyed it all." Daniel felt the words hit him like a physical blow. He tried to speak, to make sense of it all, but his throat tightened and the words wouldn't come. Instead, he could only watch as Anna's pain unfolded before him. It wasn't just the affair she had uncovered. It was the months of lies, the whispers behind her back, the promises he had broken, all crashing down on her in a single wave. "I knew, Daniel," Anna continued, her voice growing steadier, colder. I knew weeks before the wedding. I saw the way you looked at her, the way you spoke to her. You thought I didn't see it, that I didn't feel it, but I knew. I chose to go through with the wedding anyway. I thought I could forgive you. I thought if we just made it through the ceremony, everything would be okay, but tonight, all the pain came rushing back. Her words pierced him deeper than any accusation. He had underestimated her. He had thought that by pretending, by continuing with the wedding, she would simply let it all slide. But Anna wasn't the woman he had once known. She was stronger now, her heart hardened by the betrayal that had eaten away at her for months. Daniel stepped forward, but Anna held up her hand to stop him. "No, don't touch me." Her voice was fierce now, the anger and betrayal finally surfacing with full force. "I don't want your apologies, your excuses. I just want the truth." For the first time that night, Daniel didn't know how to respond. The woman standing before him wasn't the radiant bride he had once adored. She was someone broken, someone who had given everything, only to have it ripped away. And now, the truth was all that remained. "I was wrong," Daniel finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what I was thinking. I don't..." But Anna didn't want to hear it anymore. "No, Daniel," she cut him off, her voice shaking with emotion. "There's nothing you can say to fix this. You don't get to destroy everything we had and then ask for forgiveness. You had my love, my trust, and you threw it all away for someone else. And now? I have nothing left to give you. Goodbye. Forever." The witch's face fell. "And now I have nothing left to give you." In that moment, Daniel realized just how deeply he had hurt her, and how little time was left for them. The illusion of their perfect life was gone, and no amount of words could bring it back. All that remained were the shattered pieces of a love that had once seemed unbreakable. The argument between them spiraled out of control. Daniel, realizing he was losing grip on the situation, became defensive. His voice rose in frustration as he searched for a way out. Desperate, he tried to shift the blame, accusing Anna of overreacting. "You're blowing this out of proportion, Anna," he said, his tone shaky yet sharp, as if trying to deflect the weight of his guilt. But his words only fanned the flames of Anna's fury. Her heart was already shattered, and now it felt as though every painful moment from the past months had come crashing down on her in a single agonizing wave. His betrayal, his lies, the man she thought she knew, everything had been ripped away in an instant. In the heat of the moment, something inside Anna snapped. Her breath came in sharp, ragged gasps as her hands clenched in fury. She turned toward the nearby table, her eyes catching the gleam of a decorative knife. A gift they had received earlier that day, a symbol of the new life they were supposed to build together. The irony of it was not lost on her. Without thinking, her fingers wrapped around the cold handle. The metal felt heavy, almost too real for a moment like this. Her chest tightened as her heartbeat quickened, her mind racing. It was as though the knife became the only thing that could match the storm of emotions raging inside her. "Anna, put that down!" Daniel said, his voice unsteady, filled with panic. His eyes darted between her and the blade, and he took a step back. But there was no fear of physical harm in his mind. Only a disbelief that his wife, the woman he'd promised to love, could do this. But Anna was no longer the woman he had married. The betrayal had destroyed everything. The years of trust, the dreams of their future were all gone. Her heart was a broken mirror, and there was nothing he could do to piece it back together. "You don't deserve to walk away from this," Anna whispered, her voice low and cold. The words were like poison on her tongue, and as she spoke, a final, bitter resolve formed within her. This wasn't about love anymore. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about taking control of the pain he had caused. In one swift motion, she drove the knife deep into his chest. The sound of the blade slicing through flesh seemed to echo in the room as Daniel gasped, his eyes wide with shock and confusion. For a moment, he didn't understand what had just happened. His hands moved instinctively to his chest, as if to hold himself together, but it was too late. Blood seeped out from the wound, staining his shirt and spreading quickly across the floor. He staggered, his legs giving way as the life began to drain from him. His eyes, still wide with disbelief, locked onto Anna's. He opened his mouth to say something, perhaps to beg, perhaps to apologize, but no words came. His body hit the floor with a thud, and the room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. The blood continued to pool around him, dark and thick, a stark contrast to the pale light from the candles. Anna stood there, breathing heavily, the knife still gripped tightly in her hand. The shock of what she had just done slowly began to settle in. But there was no time to feel regret. The room was eerily still, and Anna was left alone with the aftermath of her own fury. Anna stood frozen, her breath shallow and rapid as the enormity of her actions began to sink in. Her hands, trembling and slick with blood, fell limply to her sides. The knife slipped from her grasp, clattering onto the floor with a metallic echo that seemed to reverberate endlessly in the suffocating silence of the room. Her eyes were fixed on Daniel's lifeless body sprawled on the floor. The crimson pool around him grew, dark and ominous, soaking into the plush carpet. His face, once full of charm and life, was now pale and still, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Exercise. Anna stumbled backward, her legs weak beneath her. She pressed her hands to her mouth, suppressing a scream that clawed at her throat. Her chest heaved as panic surged through her veins. What had she done? The once romantic suite, adorned with soft candlelight and scattered rose petals, now felt like the scene of a nightmare. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of blood and regret. Every beat of her heart pounded in her ears, drowning out rational thought. Anna's gaze darted around the room as if searching for an escape, a way to undo the irreversible. But there was no escape. The gravity of her actions was suffocating, pulling her deeper into despair. As the hours crawled by, the first light of dawn began to seep through the curtains, casting a cold, unforgiving glow over the room. Anna sat motionless on the edge of the bed, her tear-streaked face blank with shock. Her wedding gown, now stained with blood, clung to her like a haunting reminder of what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. When the hotel staff knocked on the door later that morning, concerned about the silence, Anna didn't move. It wasn't until the door creaked open that a scream pierced the air. The housekeeper froze, her eyes widening in horror at the gruesome scene. Within moments, the hotel erupted into chaos as staff called the police. Anna was taken away in handcuffs, her once elegant figure now slumped in defeat. The woman who had walked into the hotel as a radiant bride left as a prisoner, her face etched with sorrow and guilt. The news spread quickly, rippling through the small town and beyond. Headlines splashed across newspapers and televisions. Bride murders, groom on wedding night. The town, once captivated by the couple's love story, now buzzed with shock and disbelief. How could something so perfect have ended in such tragedy? In court, Anna's defense team painted a picture of a woman pushed to the edge by betrayal and heartbreak. They described her as a devoted bride who had been shattered by the discovery of her husband's affair. They argued that her actions were not premeditated, but the result of overwhelming emotional turmoil. But the jury was unmoved by the pleas. The image of Daniel's lifeless body, the photographs of the blood-streaked room, and the tragic turn of events were too stark to overlook. The judge delivered the verdict with a solemn expression. Anna was sentenced to prison for her crime. Her fairy tale wedding, once the envy of many, had ended in unimaginable tragedy. As Anna was led away, the world moved on. But the story of the bride who killed her groom lingered in the whispers of the town. A chilling reminder of how love, betrayal, and heartbreak can ignite a storm no one can predict. The truth is out. Her actions have left the family broken, but the bride's strength shows through, though justice is still to be served. For more shocking stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more exciting stories. Hit the subscribe button now.